These are the Sony A64 menu settings I use and why I use these settings, and some recommendations. Click on the chapter if you want to know more about a menu function on a specific tab and page. Menu, red camera icon, tab 1, page 1. Quality settings and image settings, page 1. File format. If you edit your own pictures on your desktop, set it to RAW or RAW plus JPEG. I set it to RAW plus JPEG so I have the option to edit the picture on my computer or to quickly just post a JPEG on social media. JPEG quality. I use fine since I mostly edit my pictures in RAW. If you're only using JPEG, I would pick extra fine. JPEG image size, set it to large, 24 megapixels for the highest quality. Aspect ratio, 3:2 will give you the most resolution, and you can always crop down to 16:9 on your phone or editing software. Panorama size, I never use this, but if you do, move the top dial up to panoramic mode. Set it to standard. Having to scan an even broader area when making panoramas will take some experience with the camera to do efficiently. Panorama direction. You can pick the direction in this menu, either up, down, left, or right. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 2. Quality settings and image settings, page 2. Long exposure noise reduction. I leave this on as there's no way of duplicating this process in post-production, except to take a black frame of the same length in the same atmospheric conditions. This will get rid of sensor noise and hot pixels, though I would turn this off if you are taking time-lapse pictures. This will slow down your camera processing. High ISO noise reduction. Here you can select the amount of noise reduction applied to images with high ISO settings. This does not affect RAW images. As Sony has a rather aggressive noise reduction, I would change it to low. If not, you could run the risk of getting paint-like smear images at high ISO values. If you're a time-lapse photographer, turn this off. This will slow down your camera processing. Color space. You can choose between standard and Adobe, which is extended color range, RGB. This is only important if you shoot JPEG and not RAW. Adobe RGB would be preferable if you print many images from JPEGs because of the extended color range. If you shoot in RAW, keep it in sRGB. Lens compensation. The chromatic aberration and distortion, I leave this on auto. I turn off shading because it is baked into the RAW file and you may get weird artifacts near the edges. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 3. Shoot mode and drive settings, page 1. Auto mode. I do not use these because I like to have more control over the image I create. Since I shoot in aperture priority or in shutter priority, this is usually grayed out. Learn to shoot in aperture priority or shutter priority instead of auto. If you do use auto mode, there are two kinds of auto. Intelligent auto. This mode automatically detects the type of scene you're shooting and adjusts the scene automatically. The camera will set everything like aperture and shutter speed. This will be like taking a picture with your phone. Superior auto. Superior auto is similar to intelligent auto, as it detects scenes automatically, except it includes composite layering and automatically choosing what it thinks is the best image. Scene selection allows you to shoot with a preset settings according to the scene when setting the mode dial to SCN, scene. Menu items are portrait, action, macro, landscape, sunset, night scene, night portrait, and anti-motion blur. Superior auto image extract. I never use this either. When in superior auto, the camera takes multiple images and combines them into one image. This is only available with JPEG. You can either save all the images captured, when you turn it off, or only the combined image, on. Turn it off. I have tried this functionality and the combined image feature doesn't work well. Drive mode. Single shooting. Normal shooting mode. Continuous shooting. Shoots images continuously while you press and hold down the shutter button. I use this if I want to capture something moving or sports. You can change the speed to low, medium, high, or high plus. Self-timer shoots an image using the self-timer after a designated number of seconds have elapsed since the shutter button was pressed. Self-timer continued shoots a designated number of images using a self-timer after a designated number of seconds have elapsed since the shutter button was pressed. Continuous bracket shoots images while holding the shutter button down, each with different degrees of brightness. I set it to 2 EV and 3 images when I'm taking an HDR image and editing the image on the computer, like this. Single bracket shoots a specific number of images, one by one, each with a different degree of brightness. I use continuous instead, less chance of moving the camera. White balance bracket shoots a total of 3 images, each with different color tones according to the selected settings for white balance, color temperature, and color filter. I never use this. And DRO bracket, I never use this either. Bracket settings, you can set the self-timer in bracket shooting mode. I set the bracket order from -, 0, and plus, since it makes it easier to see on the computer that these pictures are bracketed shots and to combine them to an HDR image. Interval shoot function. The interval shooting function is a built-in intervalometer that can be set up to take pictures at regular intervals. I use the S&Q function instead of doing a time lapse since it is faster to create. Use the interval shoot function if you want to make a high quality 4K or more time lapse. It will require a lot of pictures and then eventually combining them to make a movie out of them. Interval shooting sets whether to perform interval shooting on or off. Shooting start time sets the time from when you press the shutter button to when the interval shooting starts, from 1 second to 99 minutes 59 seconds. Shooting interval sets the shooting interval time from when one exposure starts to when the exposure for the next shot starts, 1 second to 60 seconds. Number of shots, set the number of shots for interval shooting, 1 shot to 9,999 shots. AE tracking sensitivity sets the tracking sensitivity of the auto exposure against the change in luminance during interval shooting. If you select low, exposure changes during the interval shooting will be smoother. High, mid, or low are your choices. Silent shoot in interval, set whether or not to perform silent shooting during interval shooting, on or off. It can save wear and tear on your camera when shooting thousands of images. There might be a slight chance of silent shooting might have some weird artifacts on your photos depending on what you're shooting at. I would take some test shots if you plan to use silent shooting. Shoot interval priority sets whether or not to prioritize the shooting interval when the exposure mode is program auto or aperture priority and the shutter speed becomes longer than the set time for shooting interval. Set this on or off. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 4, shoot mode and drive settings, page 2. Recall memory, camera settings 1, camera settings 2. What it does is allows you to save often used mode and settings. 1, 2, and 3 saves to your camera's internal memory, and M1 through 4 are saved to the memory card. You can recall the settings using just the mode dial. Register custom shoot set. This allows you to register shooting settings to a custom key in advance and temporarily call them while holding down the key. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 5, autofocus settings, page 1. Focus mode. Here you can select how the autofocus engine will behave when you half press the shutter button. AFS, with a half pressed of the shutter button, the camera will focus only once, suitable for capturing stills. I use this for landscapes. AFA is autofocus automatic intelligently switches between single and continuous. I never use this one since I like to have control if I want a single or continuous and not the camera focusing on something moving in the frame if I just want to it to focus on a stationary object. AFC, the camera will continuously focus on any movement when you half press the shutter button. I use this when I'm doing portrait pictures, since the camera will focus on the model's eye. DMF, the camera focuses on your subject and allows you to fine-tune your focus area further while using the manual focus ring on the lens. This is convenient in situations such as macro photography. MF, no autofocus is used, and you focus manually using the focus ring on the lens. I use this for astrophotography of taking pictures of the moon or the lunar eclipse. Another important fact is that in movie mode, only continuous AF and MF are available. Priority set in AFS sets to whether to release the shutter only if the subject is in focus or release if the subject is not in focus. I set to balanced emphasis, which shoots a balanced emphasis on both focusing and shutter release. Priority set in AFC, I set this to balanced emphasis also. Focused area. I generally set this to wide or center. Wide area uses all focus points on the sensor. Center focuses on whatever is centered in your images. I use this if the camera keeps focusing on the wrong spot. I do not use flexible spot, expand flexible spot, or tracking unless I have to take a picture and the camera is focusing on the wrong spot. Then I'll use expanded flexible spot, as it uses focus points around the flexible spot as a secondary priority area for focusing. Focus area limit. You can limit the choice of focus areas you have to cycle through to find the one you're looking for. Switch VHAF area. I generally have this set to off. It may not be immediately obvious what functionality this menu item provides unless you're using flexible spot or expanded flexible spot. It allows you to create one position for the autofocus point when the camera is held horizontally, and a different autofocus position for the autofocus point if the camera is held vertically. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 6. Autofocus settings, page 2. AF illuminator. The AF illuminator is a little red light allowing the camera to focus more easily. I leave it to off since I shoot portraits, and it can be annoying to the person you're shooting. If you are shooting in a lot of low light conditions, it is helpful when it is on. Face eye AF set. This function is used to determine whether or not the camera will focus with priority on the human faces or eyes. Eye AF settings. Face priority in AF sets whether or not to detect faces inside the focusing area and focuses on the eyes using Eye AF when autofocus is activated. I turn this on. Subject detection, either human or animal for animal AF. Right, left eye select specifies the eye to be detected. I set it to auto and the camera will focus on which eye is closest to the camera. Face detection frame display sets whether or not to display the face detection frame when face priority is AF and is set on. I set it on so I know which face the camera is focusing on. Animal eye display. This will show a square around the eye of the animal indicating focus. I set this to on also. AF with shutter selects whether to focus automatically when you press the shutter button halfway down. I leave it on. Unless you are using back button autofocus, then turn this off. Pre-AF focuses before you press the shutter button halfway down. I leave this off since the camera is likely to latch on to a subject before you have identified which subject you would like to track in continuous autofocus, especially in shooting action or sports. I start AF. I wouldn't worry about this. It always says invalid with this lens for whatever reason. AF area registration. I would keep this off. This function is useful when shooting scenes in which the subject's movements are predictable. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 7. Autofocus settings, page 3. Delete registration, AF area. Don't worry about this. AF area auto clear. Don't worry about this either. Display continuous AF area. Leave this on so you can see where your camera focus is going. Circulate a focus point. Don't worry about this unless you're using zone, flexible spot, or expanded flexible spot. When it is set to circulate, it allows you to move a spot or zone AF point over the edge of the frame and have it reappear on the other side of the frame. AF macro adjust. Don't worry about this unless you're using an A mount lens. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 8. Exposure settings, page 1. Exposure comp. This can also be set from the bottom of the control wheel. ISO setting. I set it to auto ISO. You can also select which ISO value you want from the right side of the control wheel. You can select at which ISO value you'd like to capture your image or change the auto ISO range. I have this range set to 100 to 6400. Any higher and the image gets really noisy. The ISO range limit. I just leave it since I already set the auto ISO range in the previous menu item. ISO auto minimum shutter speed, I just set it to standard. Metering mode. I use multi, which looks at the entire brightness, and on your screen it gives you a reading on whether it is over or underexposed by the meter here on the bottom. Use the center or spot if you want something specific to be properly exposed. Phase priority in multi-metering. Sets whether the camera measures brightness based on detected faces when metering mode is set to multi. Turn this on. Spot metering point. Sets whether to coordinate the spot metering position with the focus area when focus area is set to flexible spot or expanded flexible spot. I keep this on center. Unless you're using spot metering, then set it to focus point link. Exposure step. Most people keep this at 0.3 EV. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 9, exposure settings, page 2. AEL with shutter. Sets whether to fix the exposure when you press the shutter button halfway down. I set this to auto. This helps the camera adjust the exposure while shooting in continuous shooting mode. Exposure standard adjust. I would skip this. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 10, flash settings. Flash mode. If you're interested in flash photography, you'll need to purchase a hot shoe flash. I would suggest Godox, as these can both use HSS, high-speed sync, and TTL through the lens auto mode, and are quite cheap. If you'd like to get more into flash photography, I would read up on the different possibilities and what their effect would be on your images. This is a basic explanation of what these different modes do. Flash fill. A flash fill is useful when in daylight to fill the shadows with light, like a person in the shade. Slow sync tells the camera to use a long shutter speed along with a flash, which is better for night shots. In manual and shutter priority modes, there's no difference in flash power. But when using aperture priority, program, or auto, choosing slow sync tells the camera to use a longer shutter speed than it would ordinarily pick. What the slow sync flash mode does is first fire the flash for the selected exposure, then allow for a longer shutter speed that will allow for more ambient light to be captured by the sensor. Rear sync. Rear sync tells the flash to fire right before the shutter closes. Moving objects will show a streak where they came from and a sharp image where they were at the end of the exposure. This conveys a sense of speed with moving objects. Wireless. Select wireless if you want to trigger an external flash. Flash comp or flash compensation. Especially when using slow sync or rear sync flash modes, you might have to lower the power of the flash to get a decently exposed image. Exposure compensation set. Selects if the exposure compensation function, the .5 EV or .3 EV steps, also reduced flash power or not. Leave it to ambient and flash. Wireless flash. Light signaling flash shoots that uses the light of the flash attached to the camera as a signal light. Radio signaling flash shooting that uses wireless communication. Red eye reduction. this anti-red eye setting quickly fires the flash before your image capture starts, reducing the red eye effect often seen when using a flash. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 11, color, white balance, and image processing settings, page 1. White balance. If you are shooting RAW, you can set it to auto. If you are shooting JPEG or video, set the white balance that looks best to you. Priority set in auto white balance. Just keep this on standard. DRO Auto HDR. DRO stands for Dynamic Range Optimize and analyzes the contrast of your scene in real time. It produces an image with optimal brightness and recovered shadow detail. Just keep this on D-Range Optimizer. Creative style. The Sony creative styles can best be explained as being film emulations, the same way as do some other camera manufacturers implement this. There is a range of styles available from vivid color to black and white. If you're shooting RAW, these styles are embedded into the RAW file, but not baked. They can always be zeroed after importing them to your RAW editor. JPEGs are saved with the styling applied. Standard is good for video if you're just starting out. Portrait for taking pictures of people, and landscapes for landscapes. Picture effect. Think of this menu as an Instagram app running your camera, with all kinds of retro filters and effects. These are only available when quality is set to JPEG, not RAW. Picture profile. Allows you to change the settings for the color, gradation, etc. These are mostly used for video shooter when you want to color grade the video. There are plenty of YouTube videos that explain the process of color grading video. Until then, I would set this to off. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 12. Soft skin effect. I would turn this off and edit this yourself on the computer or using an app on your phone. It only works in JPEG. Shutter AWB lock. You can set whether or not to lock the white balance while the shutter button is pressed when the white balance is set to auto or underwater auto. I set this to continuous shooting, so if I happen to set the drive to continuous shooting, it locks the white balance to the setting of the first shot. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 13, Focus Assist Settings. Focus Magnifier. When focusing manually or in DMF mode, you can set the camera to magnify a part of the screen so you can check focus. It is defaulted to the center of the control wheel to enlarge the image and select the area you want to enlarge using top, bottom, left, right side of the control wheel. Each time you press the center, the magnification scale will change. Focus magnifier time. You can set how long to hold the magnified area during MF assist. 2 seconds, 5 seconds, or no limit. I set mine to no limit. AF in Focus Magnifier. Keep this set to on. You can always focus on the subject more accurately using autofocus by magnifying the area where you want to focus. While the magnified image is displayed, you can focus on a smaller area than the flexible spot. Magnify the image by pressing the center of the control wheel, and then adjust the position using top, bottom, right, left of the control wheel. Press the shutter button halfway down to focus. Press the shutter button all the way down to shoot. MF Assist. This works in conjunction with the Focus Magnifier found on this page also. You might remember that you can select the area to magnify when using manual focus, MF. MF Assist will need to be turned on if you want to use this feature. Focus peaking. Set this to on. This is a manual focusing aid which works when you have your camera set to manual focus or DMF. Peaking level, you can set it to high, mid, or low. I set mine to mid. Peaking color, you can choose the color of the peaking between red, white, and yellow. I have it set to red, as this contrasts nicely with most scenes you capture. Red camera icon, tab 1, page 14, face detection and shoot assist settings. Face registration. If you register faces in advance, the camera can detect the registered face as a priority when face detection is set to on registered faces. Shoot the face from the front in a brightly lit place. The face may not be registered correctly if it's obscured by a hat, a mask, sunglasses, etc. This is helpful with a crowd of people like a wedding. Camera settings 1. Face registration, new registration. Align the guide frame with the face to be registered and press the shutter button. When a confirmation message appears, select Enter. Register faces priority. Sets whether to focus with higher priority on faces registered using face registration when face priority in AF is set to on. Smile shutter. Great for selfies as the camera automatically shoots an image when it detects a smiling face. Auto object framing. When enabled, the camera will automatically crop your captured image to what it deems best, meaning the camera will crop the picture. Only available in JPEGs. A nice feature if you don't want to bother too much with cropping the picture yourself. I turn this off. Set portrait timer. As you probably know, you can change the angle of the monitor and shoot images while watching the monitor. Simply turn this setting on, flip the screen, and press the shutter button. The camera will start shooting after 3 seconds. Purple camera icon, tab 1, page 1. Movie settings, page 1. Exposure mode. You can select the exposure mode for movie shooting here. Program Auto allows you to shoot with the exposure adjusted automatically, both the shutter speed and aperture value. Aperture priority allows you to shoot after adjusting the aperture value manually. Shutter priority allows you to shoot after adjusting the shutter speed manually. Manual exposure allows you to shoot after adjusting the exposure, both the shutter speed and the aperture value manually. S&Q Exposure Mode. You can select the exposure mode for slow motion, quick motion shooting. You can change the settings and playback speed for slow motion, quick motion shooting with S&Q settings later. They are the same modes as the exposure mode. Program Auto, Aperture Priority, Shutter Priority, and Manual Exposure. File format, video. You can choose between XAVC S 4K, AXVC SH, or AVC HD. Either record in XAVC S 4K or XAVC S HD. Not in AVC HD. This is an old format and it is low quality. Record settings, video. You can choose the quality of recorded video here. Select the image size, frame rate, and image quality for movie recording. The higher the bit rate, the higher the picture quality. You will see 50M or 25M next to the frame rate. Always choose the highest one available for the best quality. When using XAVCS 4K, if you want to use 30, 25, or 24 frames per second, pick the 100M for best quality. When using XAVCS HD, if you want to use 24, 25, 30, or 60 frames per second, use 50M for the best quality. For 120 frames per second, use 100M. S&Q settings. You can do slow motion recording or quick motion recording. The sound will not be recorded. With a higher frame rate like 120 is good for slow motion video. With a lower frame rate, using between 1 and 15 frames per second, you can create time lapses. The camera will automatically create the time lapse without having to spend hours constructing it yourself with hundreds of pictures. They're only available in 1080p, so it will not be as high quality as if you were to shoot hundreds of pictures to create the time lapse yourself. But it is perfect for vloggers since it is a lot faster to create. How to record a slow motion movie on this camera. Select the mode dial to Movie S&Q Motion. Select Menu, Camera Settings 2, Movie S&Q Motion, and select the desired setting of Slow Motion, Quick Motion SQ, Program Auto, Aperture Priority, Shutter Priority, or Manual Exposure. Select Menu, Camera Settings 2, S&Q Settings, and select the desired settings for the Record setting and Frame Rate. Record Settings selects the frame rate of the movie you're creating. So if your movie is going to be in 30 frames per second, set this to 30p. Frame Rate selects the shooting frame rate. This is what you set for the rate the camera is shooting. 1 to 15 for time lapses or 120 for slow motion. Press the Movie button to start recording. Press the Movie button again to stop recording. Playback speed. The playback speed will vary depending on the assigned record settings and the frame rate. Proxy Recording. This function allows you to simultaneously record a low bitrate proxy file at the same time as recording a high bitrate original movie file. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 2, movie settings, page 2. AF drive speed, movie. You can switch focusing speed when using autofocus in movie mode. Fast. Fast sets the AF drive speed to fast. This mode is suitable for shooting action scenes such as sports. Normal sets the AF drive speed to normal. Slow sets the AF drive speed to slow. With this mode, the focus switches smoothly when the subject to be focused is changed. AF track sensitivity, movie. You can set the AF sensitivity separately in movie mode. Responsive sets the AF sensitivity to high. This mode is useful when recording movies in which the subject is moving quickly. Standard sets the AF sensitivity to normal. Lock on sets the AF sensitivity to low. You can shoot with a stable focus by ignoring the influence of anything in front of the subject. I would recommend normal and standard. If it's too slow or too fast, just change one of the settings. Auto slow shutter, movie. Sets whether or not to adjust the shutter speed automatically when recording dark scenes. On uses the auto slow shutter. The shutter speed automatically slows when recording in dark locations. You can reduce noise in the movie by using a slow shutter speed when recording in dark locations. Off does not use auto slow shutter. The recorded movie will be darker than when on is selected, but you can record movies with smoother motion and less object blur. Internal Focus Magnification, movie. Sets the internal magnification scale for the Focus Magnifier functionality in the movie shooting mode. You can choose between 1 or 4 times magnification to check focus. Auto recording. Regardless of the auto recording level settings, the limiter always operates. Auto recording level. You can adjust the auto recording level while checking the level meter. If you're not using any external mic, just a camera mic, set it to around 12 to 15. If you're using an external shotgun mic, set it to around 7 to 9. If you're using a lav mic, set it around 1 to 3. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 3, movie settings, page 3. Audio level display. It sets whether to display the audio level on the screen. Don't see the audio level display? Check if auto recording is set to off. Check if DISP, display settings, is set to no Disp info. During slow motion or quick motion shooting, audio is automatically turned off. Wind noise reduction. This helps reduce noise from the wind during video recording. When I've used this, it sounds like I'm underwater. I would use an external mic and put a windsock on it. Marker display, movie. Select if you want guidelines, a grid, in movie mode. The markers are displayed on the monitor or a viewfinder. Marker settings, movie. Sets the markers to be displayed while shooting movies. You can display several markers at the same time. Center sets whether or not to display the center mark in the center of the shooting screen, off or on. Aspect sets the aspect marker display, off, 4:3, 13:9, 14:9, 15:9, 1.66:1, 1.85:1, 2.35:1. Safety zone sets the safety zone display. This becomes the standard range that can be received by a general household TV. Off, 80%, 90%. Guide frame sets whether or not to display the guide frame. You can verify whether the subject is level or perpendicular to the ground. Movie with shutter. You can start and stop recording movies by pressing the shutter button, which is bigger and easier to press than the movie button. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 4, shutter and SteadyShot settings. Silent shooting. This setting uses the electronic shutter so you can shoot images without the shutter sound. Unless you really need it, like wildlife photography, the negative of using an electronic shutter is shooting moving objects. Cars, propellers, or even people will make them look wobbly in the picture. I usually turn this off, especially when taking portraits, so the model can hear when the picture is taken. E-front curtain shutter. This shortens the lag time between shutter releases. I turn this on. Release without lens. It makes it possible to capture images even if a lens is not supported by the camera, like when using an adapter with vintage lenses, or using lenses for another camera like Canon, or using manual lenses. Release without card. If set to off, you won't be able to engage the shutter when there's no SD card in the slot. This is useful to prevent you from shooting images without the ability to save them. SteadyShot sets whether or not to use the SteadyShot. It will be grayed out if you mount a lens without SteadyShot. Turn it off when using a tripod. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 5. Zoom settings. Zoom. This section only pertains to video. Zoom in the amount you want. Zoom settings. Optical zoom only. Uses only the optical zoom capability of your lens. Digital zoom. It's like zooming on the computer and it reduces the picture quality. Clear image zoom. I would use. The camera first zooms to the maximum optical magnification, then uses clear image zoom technology to enlarge the image an additional 2 times, producing clear, sharp images despite the increased zoom ratio. This is great if you're videoing with a prime lens and want to zoom in on something. Zoom ring rotate assigns zoom in T or zoom out W functions to the zoom ring rotation direction. Available only with power zoom lenses that support this function. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 6. Display and auto review settings, page 1. Display button selects the functionality, what is shown on the screen, when you press the DISP button on the control wheel. You can choose what settings you want to show on the LCD screen or in the viewfinder. Finder, monitor. You can set the behavior of the viewfinder and screen here. You can set it to auto, which will switch between screen and viewfinder once your eye has been detected near the viewfinder. I have my camera set to this. Or you can set it to only the viewfinder on or just the monitor on. Finder frame rate, keep it on standard. Zebra setting. The zebra setting shows a zebra pattern on the screen while shooting in any area that is in danger of highlight clipping. You can switch this to off or anywhere in the range between 70 to 100. The zebra pattern is a highlight warning indicator that is common in video cameras. It doesn't control exposure, but it warns you that your highlights are blown out. It is not recorded into the resulting image. I have it set halfway around 70. It is a very useful indication of correct exposure of the entire scene. Grid line sets whether the grid line is displayed or not. The grid line will help you adjust the composition of images. The rule of thirds grid places main subjects close to one of the grid lines that divide the image into thirds for a well-balanced composition. Square grid. Square grids make it easier to confirm the horizontal level of your composition. is suitable to determine the quality of the composition when shooting landscapes, close-up, or duplicate images. Diagonal square grid. Place the subject on the diagonal line to express an uplifting and powerful feeling. Off does not display the grid line. Exposure Set Guide. The Exposure Set Guide is an on-screen scroller that tells you the relation between your chosen aperture and the appropriate shutter speed for the scene you're shooting on. I keep this on. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 7. Display and auto review settings, page 2. Live view display. Live view display allows you to see the image you're going to capture with the settings that you have dialed in, like aperture and shutter speed. Auto review. It will immediately show you the picture you took for a few seconds before going to camera mode. I find this very annoying, so I turn it off. If you want to review your image, simply press the playback button to do so. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 8. Custom operation settings, page 1. Custom key shoot, custom key PB. You can assign the desired function to the desired key. Some functions are available only when they are assigned to a custom key. The keys that can be assigned functions are different for custom key picture, video, and play button. You can assign the desired functions to the following keys: Custom Button 1, Custom Button 2, AF/MF button, AEL button, FN button, Control Wheel, Center button, Down button, Left button, Right button, Custom Button 3. In picture mode, I set Custom Button 3 to white balance. I keep the autofocus and manual focus AEL button set as is. I keep the control wheel, left, right, and down as set. I set the center button to switch to the right eye or left eye. Custom Button 1 to Focus Magnifier. In video mode, I have most the same. I have Custom Button 2 set to zoom. In play mode, I have the FN key to send to smartphone and Custom Button 1 to rating. Function menu set. You can assign the functions to be called up when you press the FN function button. Since I mostly do photography, I have mine setting on the top left: drive mode, focus area, metering mode, flash mode, audio mic level. Bottom row: peak and color, picture profile, grid line, frame rate for the S&Q, creative style, and silent shooting. My dial settings. You can assign the desired functions to the control dial and the control wheel and register up to 3 combinations of settings as My Dial Settings. Dial and wheel setup. You can switch the functions of the control dial and the control wheel, which you want to control the aperture on and which you want to control the shutter speed on. Purple camera icon, tab 2, page 9. Custom operation settings, page 2. AV/TV rotate. This sets the direction of rotation for the control dial or control wheel when changing the aperture value or shutter speed, normal or reverse. I just keep it normal. Dial wheel EV comp. You can compensate the exposure using the front or rear dial. You can adjust the exposure in a range of -5 EV to 5 EV. Function of touch operation. Select the functionality of the touch screen. There are 2 choices. Touch shutter. When you shoot using the monitor, the camera automatically focuses on the point you touch and shoots the still image. Touch focus. You can select on a subject on which to focus using touch operations in the still image and movie recording modes. I set to touch focus. Movie button. Sets whether or not to activate the movie button. Always starts movie recording when you press the movie button in any mode. Movie mode only starts movie recording when you press the movie button only if the shooting mode is set to movie SQ motion mode. I have mine set to always. Dial wheel lock. You can set whether the dials and wheels will be locked by pressing and holding the FN function button. You can release the lock by holding the FN function button down again. Lock locks the front and rear dials when you press and hold the FN button. Unlock, the front or rear dials are not locked, even if you press and hold the FN function button. I keep it unlocked. Audio signals selects whether the camera produces a sound or not. For example, when the focus is achieved by pressing the shutter button halfway down. It is a little distracting to me, so I turn it off. Network settings, tab 3, page 1. Send to smartphone. You can send one or several images directly to your wireless device, phone, or a tablet. You can decide which images you want to transfer on the camera or the smartphone via the Sony Imaging Edge app, available for free in the Apple or Android store. You will have to connect the camera via Wi-Fi first. It makes a Wi-Fi access point, using the instructions on the camera screen. It works just like connecting to any other access point with your phone or tablet. When your phone has wirelessly connected to the camera once and you've entered the password, it will remember this and make it a lot easier to connect later. Send to computer. You'll need to connect the computer physically to the camera using the supplied USB cable, and you can push selected images to your Sony Play Memories desktop software downloaded from their website. View on TV. If you have a Wi-Fi enabled TV, you can see pictures and slideshows directly from the camera through your home wireless network. Control with smartphone sets whether to connect the camera and the smartphone using Wi-Fi on or off. Connection displays the QR code or SSID used to connect the camera to a smartphone. When it's set to off, the camera will only connect to a smartphone only when the connection procedure is performed. Airplane mode disables all wireless functions, just like airplane mode does on your phone. Wi-Fi settings. I never had to mess with these settings. Network settings, tab 3, page 2. Wireless settings, page 2. Bluetooth settings. Controls the settings for connecting the camera to a smartphone via a Bluetooth connection. You need to pair the camera and smartphone before using the location information interlocking function. Location info link set. You can use the Image Edge app to obtain location information from a smartphone that is connected with your camera using Bluetooth communication. You can record the obtained location information when you are taking pictures. Options in this menu. Location info link sets whether to obtain the location information by linking with a smartphone. Auto time correct sets whether to automatically correct the date setting of the camera using information from a linked smartphone. Auto area adjust sets whether to automatically correct the area setting of the camera using information from a linked smartphone. Edit device name. If you wish, you can change the name of the device access point, perhaps to make it easier to identify which camera is yours in particular situations. Reset network set resets all network settings. If something is not functioning properly and you want to start from scratch, it can be useful. Playback options, tab 4, page 1. Playback settings, page 1. Protect protects recorded images against accidental erasure. Rotate rotate the orientation of images in camera. Delete deletes one or multiple images stored on your SD. Rating rates your images in camera for easy culling in Lightroom afterward. Rating set, custom key. When using the custom key, which ratings do you want to cycle through? Specify printing. Specify printing is a feature that allows images to be marked for printing later. Playback options tab 4, page 2. Playback settings, page 2. Photo capture. Captures a chosen scene in a movie to save as a still image. First shoot a movie, then pause the movie during playback to capture decisive moments that tend to be missed when shooting still images, and save them as still images. Enlarge Image. Select an image and expand a portion of that picture, useful for checking details in focus. Enlarge Initial Magnification sets the initial magnification scale when playing back enlarged images. Enlarge Initial Position sets the initial position when enlarging an image in playback. You can select either Image Center or Focus Position. Continuously Playback for Interval continuously plays back images shot using interval shooting. You can create movies from still images produced by an interval shooting using the computer software Imaging Edge. You cannot create movies from the still images on the camera. Playback Speed for Interval sets the playback speed for still images during continuous PB for interval. Playback Options, Tab 4, Page 3. Playback Settings, Page 3. Slideshow. Select whether you want the camera to repeat slideshows when all the pictures are viewed or not, and choose the interval between slides. View Mode. Select how the camera will arrange captured pictures in the viewing browser. Image Index. Choose whether you want the image browser to display 12 or larger, or 30 smaller images per page. Display as a group. When shooting bursts of images in continuous shooting, it is possible during playback to see the groups of images rather than all the images. When cycling through the groups, you can see individual images in that group by pressing the center button in the control wheel. Display Rotation. Select whether you want the camera to rotate images automatically when you rotate the camera or not. Image Jump Setting. Image Jump Setting allows you to choose which images you choose to see when reviewing them in playback. For example, you can choose only to see your rated images. This is useful to implement when you want to show somebody just your hero images from the day's shoot. You can see all images by using the dial you have not assigned to see only the rated images. Camera Setup, Tab 5, Page 1. Monitor Brightness. Manually set the monitor brightness or change a brighter setting for sunny weather. Viewfinder Brightness. Set to Auto, which adapts the lighting circumstances or manually changes to your preferred setting. Finder Color Temperature. Change the color temperature of the viewfinder, colder, warmer, to your liking. I don't make any adjustments here. Gamma Display Assist. Movies with S-Log gamma are assumed to be processed after shooting in order to make use of the wide dynamic range. They are therefore displayed in low contrast during shooting and may be difficult to monitor. Using Gamma Display Assist, contrast equivalent to that of a normal gamma can be reproduced. In addition, Gamma Display Assist can also be applied when playing back movies on the camera's monitor viewfinder. Volume Settings. Modify the playback volume for recorded video or demos. Tile Menu. Choose between tiles or tiled front page when accessing the menu, or a linear tab style menu layout. I want to get right to the menu, so I keep this off. Camera Setup, Tab 5, Page 2. Mode Dial Guide. I turn this off. It can be handy for a beginner to get familiar with what the different shooting modes do. Delete Confirm. Set this to Cancel First. That will give you the option to cancel first before you accidentally delete a photo. You want to leave this on to make sure you don't accidentally delete anything. Display Quality. You can change the display quality from standard to high at the expense of shorter battery life. I keep it on standard. Power Save Start Time sets time intervals to automatically switch the power safe mode when you are not performing operations to prevent wearing down the battery. To return to shooting mode, perform an operation such as pressing the shutter halfway down. I have set it to 5 minutes, a good balance between usability and battery life. Auto Power Off Temp sets the temperature of the camera at which the camera turns off automatically when shooting, overheating. When it is set to high, it can continue shooting even when the temperature of the camera gets hotter than normal. The A6400 new processor has a higher heat tolerance than the earlier cameras. Many people were able to record almost an hour and a half, and the heat signal never came on. You might want to use a tripod, though, as this camera could become very hot. NTSC PAL Selector plays back movies recorded with the camera on an NTSC PAL System TV. If you're wondering why you don't have 24p or 120p, change it to NTSC. Camera Setup, tab 5, page 3. Cleaning mode. If dust or debris gets inside the camera and adheres to the surface of the image sensor, it may appear as dark spots on the image, depending on the shooting environment. If this happens, this might help. If not, you may have to clean the image sensor. Touch operation. Sets whether or not to activate touch operations on the monitor. Touch operations when shooting with the monitor are referred to as touch panel operations, and touch operations when shooting with the viewfinder are referred to as touch pad operations. Touch panel pad. I set it to touch panel only, which activates only the touch pad operations when shooting with the monitor, so I don't accidentally have my face touch the monitor and have the camera focus on something I didn't want it to focus on. But the touch still works when you're looking at the monitor in the back of the camera. Touchpad settings. You can keep this on the default settings if you set it to touch panel only. Demo mode. You do not need demo mode. Turn this off. TCUB settings. Skip. Camera settings. Tab 5, page 4. Remote control. If you have an infrared remote, turn this on so you can trigger the shutter or movie recording with the remote. HDMI settings. If you're using an external monitor, you can control the settings here. Auto. The camera automatically recognizes the HD monitor and sets the output resolution. 2160p, 1080p. Output signals in 2160p or 1080p. 1080p outputs a signal in HD picture quality. 1080i outputs a signal in HD picture quality. 24 or 60p output. HDMI info display. If you want to display the camera information on the monitor. TC output. Sets whether or not to display the timecode information on the monitor. 4K. Output select. Just keep it on memory card plus HDMI so the camera records the video and displays it on the monitor. USB connection. Keep it on mass storage for firmware updates. PC remote if you want to control the camera from the computer. USB LUN settings. Keep it on multi. USB power supply. Keep this on. You can charge the camera with a USB port. Camera setup, tab 5, page 5. PC remote settings. Sets whether to save still images stored in both the camera and the computer during PC remote shooting. This setting is useful when you want to check recorded images on the camera without leaving the camera. Language sets the language to be used in the menu items, warnings, and messages. Date time setup sets the date and time in the camera. Area settings sets where in the world you are using the camera. Copyright info writes copyright information onto the still images. Format erases everything on the memory card. Always format the card in the camera, not on the computer for stable performance of the memory card. Camera setup, tab 5, page 6. File number. Name your files according to some shots or reset it to start from 1. Just skip it. Set file name. Use the standard file naming system or a customized one. I have 3 different Sony cameras, and each one has a different file name so I can tell which camera a picture came from. Select REC folder. Selects where the camera will store newly captured images. Skip this. New folder. Make a folder for quickly organizing events and locations. Skip this. Folder name. Choose whether to have folder names in standard form, NTSC, or create a new one by date. Setting folders by date will be organizing images easier. I have mine by date. Recover image database. If you have a storage card error, you can try to rebuild the database to retrieve lost images possibly. Camera setup, tab 5, page 7. Display media info. You can check how much space is left on your SD card. Version. Check which version of the operating system your camera and your lens is running. Sony sporadically releases updates with new features, so it might be worth checking if any new firmware versions are available. Setting reset. Fully resets the camera to factory settings. My menu. This is where you can set a menu item that you always have to change and can get to quickly. Here is what I currently have my menu set to. You will discover in time what you will need to have quick access to and put your own here. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment or a question in the comment section below, and I will try to answer it. If you like this video, please hit like, hit subscribe if you want to subscribe to more videos. See me in the next video.